Nice to be back here at University of Pittsburgh. About 20 years ago, I was a student here, standing on this stage. I was president of the Black Action Society, which I don't know if it still exists. Does it still exist? Yes. So I was president of that organization and stood on this stage, like I said, 20 years ago. So it's really amazing and wonderful to be back. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I've learned from working with artists. How many of you have an artist best friend? Ooh, a few hands. Okay. So after this talk, you're going to go out and get one. There are some really important reasons why I believe artists as friends, as community members, as parents are important. And it's come from my experience at the Kelly Strayhorn. And as I was studying and moving through school, somehow along the way, I became friends with lots of artists. People who would say, oh, I've always wanted to perform my poetry, but I don't know where or how I could do that. What should I do? And I'd say, oh, well, let's just find a room and fill out the requisition form and get you a place to perform. I paint. I love to paint. I take photographs. I love to take photographs. I'd like to show them. How can I do it? Where would I do it? And so early on, I kind of became a person that I was like the supporting actress all the time. People would come and say, can you help me with this? And I would say, oh, okay. And I became the person to support other people's ideas. And I didn't think of it as much, really. I didn't think of it as anything special, that I was able to do that. Fast forward again. So I come back to Pittsburgh in 2008. And the Kelly Strayhorn Theater, which is a 100-year-old theater in East Liberty. How many of you have been there? Okay, so a few of you have been there. So 100 years old. And the theater had been renovated by a group of concerned citizens, probably in the late 90s, who didn't want to see it torn down. They wanted to see it continue to be a theater. However, it's one thing to have an idea. It's an entirely different thing to actually make it work. So I came back to Pittsburgh, and I didn't know what I would do, and I had a few friends who said, well, Janera, there's this theater in East Liberty. You really should apply for that job. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about running a theater. Why would I do that? How could I even do it? In any case, I applied. I got the job. And the first season, I decided that I wanted us to present about 30 nights of our own programming. And when I got to KST, our total budget was $50,000. Well, sorry. The amount of money in the bank was $50,000, which was not enough to pay the salary that the board had agreed to pay me. I know, I found that out. But in any case, I went to my first board meeting, and I had a list of artists and a list of projects, and I said, I want to do these things. And they said, well, how are you going to do that? How will we do it? We don't have the money to do it. In any case, I took that, I heard that, and I said, well, we have to do something. We're a theater. We're in a neighborhood. People expect us to be open. We have to do something, so we have to be open. There's really not a choice. We've accepted the idea that having a theater is important, and so now the next step, once you accept that idea, is that you have to make it happen. The first project we started with was a residency program. So for those of you who are not in arts making world, a residency is basically an opportunity for you as a creative person to have time and the space to develop an idea, unbothered, right? So you come in, whether it's a studio space or a theater or just a room in a corner by yourself, you have the time and the space to develop an idea. For me, it seemed to make sense, and I don't know why, but it made sense to start our programming with residencies. Now, if you're following me, you might be thinking, okay, $50,000 in the bank, you have no money, and you want to start a residency program which costs money? Where's the revenue coming from for this program? I decided not to worry with that question. And so we started our first residency program. It was called Next Stage. And the first artist we hosted was Kyle Abraham. So Kyle Abraham is a dancer, choreographer, grew up in Pittsburgh, went to Kappa High School, danced with dance companies here, left Pittsburgh, went to New York. And when I started at KST, I said to him, you know, Kyle, I'm here at this new job. I'd like to start with a residency program. Is there something you're working on that we could help support by providing you with the space to do it? And he said, yes, actually. There's a piece that I'm working on called The Radio Show, and it's about my childhood and growing up in Pittsburgh and the importance of radio stations. There are two lessons that I think are important. One is, you have to start with what you've got. You have, whatever the situation is. We meet with artists all the time and producers, and they say, I have an idea. You say, okay, what is the idea? And they start to talk, and they say, well, I can't do it because I don't have money. You say, okay, what else don't you have? I don't have a space, okay? And people can quickly rattle off the list of things they don't have. When I ask the question, or we ask the question, well, what do you need? What if I gave you all the money? Would you be ready to do this? Then there's usually silence. The thing I'd like to say about that is, and as I said, it's two parts in that experience, two lessons. One, have an idea, right? Have an idea. Take time with the idea. Ask a question. Ask yourself, why am I even doing this? What's important to me about doing this? And the second is, you actually have to start doing something. Like when you make that first movement, that first step, that's where the ideas actually develop. There's no perfect idea to start. I've talked to lots of artists. I mean, I don't know, hundreds. I'm telling you, it doesn't exist. There's no genius idea. Like, oh, this is, in the moment it's delivered. It becomes brilliant as it's growing, as it's shared. So I think it's really important, you know, in the arts and culture business, genius is celebrated. We have such a thing as the Genius Award. And Kyle Abraham went on to receive one in 2013. He received a MacArthur Genius Award. And I don't know what, I can't, of course, KST is one part of a very long story for him. But had we not taken the steps, had we said, no, we're not ready, we don't have the money, we can't do this, we won't offer the residency. Had he said, no, this idea isn't ready, I'm not going to do this, I can't make this piece called The Radio Show, there were many moments where we could have talked ourselves out of it. We didn't, and I think that that's, you know, lesson number two. So lesson number one, having the idea, but lesson number two is you actually have to do something. You have to take some steps. You have to practice. And it doesn't really matter, how often you do it, but you have to do it with some pace, some steadiness. Moving forward, so KST, that was 2009. We were crossing our fingers and nervously waiting to see how many people would show up. Thankfully, they did show up. And we've gone from an organization presenting about 15 or 20 things in that first year to now, I would say, 50 or 60 projects a year. We are, at that point when I started, the organization had been open for less than 150 days a year. We're now open for about 300 days a year. Again, you know, at that moment, in 2009, there were lots of folks who said, well, you don't have everything you need. How are you going to do this? And I have this thing about me. You know, someone asked me earlier why my name is in lowercase. it's kind of a strange story. But there's something about going in the opposite direction that I think is important in movement. Now, of course, things happen when we all collectively come together. But there are moments where you have to say, okay, I'm hearing this information and I'm going to turn in a different direction. The final story I'd like to share is related to, I think, the reason why I was asked to be part of this today. We started at KST a project called 1839. It's a magazine, it's a digital magazine that we started with Damon Young, Disha Filya, and a woman named Sarah Young, who were the creative team for 1839. We could have waited for that the perfect moment, right? All the pieces to come together, the perfect team, the right amount of money, the right timing, the right PR, all of those things. For me, I think there's no point in doing that, because the real learning comes by actually doing it. And now that we've had 6 months of producing this magazine, there's so much more that we know now that we didn't know in the beginning. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the opportunity to learn. And with each of these instances, throughout my experience at KST, I've had many opportunities to fail. And it's been important because there are things that we learn and then we're able to regroup and try again. So now with 1839, that's exactly what we're going to do. And I think, when I think back on the experiences at KST and the programs that we've launched, the artists that we've worked with, there's one final lesson that if you don't remember anything else I said today, please remember this. The folks who are most successful have a really dynamic ecosystem of support. And what I mean by ecosystem of support, these are artists and producers and makers who have been able to create a circle of gratitude, compassion, and kindness with a trusted team of collaborators or their ensembles or their partners or their funders or their investors. All of the key stakeholders, there's a tight circle of trust and compassion, of gratitude. But there's one other important thing, which is criticism. That circle of criticism. The people who are going to say, no, what you're doing, it's not right. It doesn't look good. You should try something else. You should do something differently. I meet artists all the time who are afraid of that criticism. When they put something on stage, they want you to love it, all of it. And if you say, well, I loved most of it, but there's this one section I didn't quite understand. Most folks, they don't want to hear that, which I think maybe is the reason why there's the hesitation in the beginning. People will say all the reasons. Oh, I don't have the time to do this thing that I really want to do. I don't have the money to do this thing that I really want to do. I don't have the support to do this thing that I really want to do. But I think what I've come to understand is what we might actually be saying is, I'm afraid that this thing that I'm going to offer won't be accepted. And maybe even not only not accepted, but actually critiqued in some way. But I'll tell you that what I've seen from artists like Kyle Abraham and Sidra Bell and Jamil Kasako, and these are all folks you may not have heard of, but you should find out, check them out. And Terrence Hayes, who's here on this campus, is that their circles of support, their ecosystems of support, include critique. You have to ask the question, how can I be better at this? What can you tell me so that I can be better at this? And why not ask that question? In my work at KST, you know, our job, you know, people will say we're an arts and culture organization. But what I tell the folks on our staff is that we are not in the arts and culture business in the way you might think of it. I see us as being in the empowerment business. We are here to bring the resources that we have to people with brilliant ideas. And the thing we've come to find out about brilliance is that it takes practice. And it takes actually putting yourself in vulnerable and uncomfortable situations. And it's really a set of habits that you have to cultivate, right? So, you know, in this time period where people are really quick to unfriend someone that says something they don't like, or to, you know, tweet something at someone that they don't like, I would urge you to think about your circles, the spheres that you're creating around you. And yes, of course, we all need the friend that says, yes, you can do this. You're awesome. You're great. Keep going. I need that every day, all day long. And we need the friends who are going to say, well, are you sure? Are you sure that's what you want to do? I don't know. Are you sure? You need that. You need that, because then you get to reaffirm and reconfirm what your intentions are. But you must have that friend that says, I saw that piece that you did. I saw the piece you wrote. I saw that research paper. I saw that presentation. And I want to know, why did you do that? Why did you make that choice? And actually, I think you could have tried a different choice. That ecosystem, your ecosystem, having it include critique is important. And you know, I said, when we were talking in the green room, I didn't know what I would say about Pittsburgh, because this idea of move and movement, and I said, I don't know what to say about Pittsburgh, but it's coming to me right now. What I'd like to say to Pittsburgh is that I want us to be a place where we are comfortable with critique. And not the critique like, oh, I wish you would, you know, fill the pothole on my street. Or, I don't know, not complaint. Complaint and critique are not the same thing. But I want us to be a place where we can actually ask people a question, like we're being thoughtful, and we're asking, what is this about? Why are you doing this? Why does this matter? And I think, more importantly, if we're a place where we have the habit of doing that, of being critical, it might encourage people to take more risks. We might all develop a risk-taking gene. And in taking more risks, we might actually get to something really fantastic and remarkable, which is what I would like to see us do. So thank you.